The first Street Fighter game was nothing special, initially pitched to Capcom as to be the most complex fighting game to be made. However, the gameplay was very lackluster, slow and boring. Moves and fighters felt heavy, the soundtrack was annoying, and you had to hit large pressure sensitive pads to determine the strength of your move. For example, if you hit the punch button softly, you get a light punch, but if you hit it hard, you get a heavy punch. It did, however, introduce a mechanic that would play a key role in what was to come. That system was special move inputs, entering a series of commands to perform special moves beyond just punches and kicks, fireballs, tornado kicks and the dragon uppercut. These were incredibly hard to actually pull off though, due to strict timing windows and other factors. However, it was with Street Fighter's successor that the fire of the fighting game genre would truly be ignited. Street Fighter 2 absolutely exploded into the arcades, becoming the third best-selling arcade game and fifth best-selling SNES game of all time. There was nothing like it, with the huge well-animated sprites, easier to do special moves, interesting storylines, a TV anime, feature-length film and action figures. There was nothing bigger than Street Fighter 2 in its time. In the game, you pick from 8, later 12 and finally 16 characters and go around the world battling fighters with the aim to become the world warrior. However, the part that made it explode was the addition of head-to-head combat. Now you weren't going to the arcade to beat the game, you were going to beat the other player. But in the midst of this arcade phenomenon's popularity, keen players may have noticed that you can do one move, then doing a special move shortly after would let you land both attacks with no escape for the other players, otherwise known as a combo. However, this was actually discovered during development and was completely accidental. Producer Noritaka Funamizu realized attacks could be chained together during a bug check on the Car Crusher stage. Initially, they removed the bug as they thought it would be unfair for players. However, as they played that build of the game without combos, they just realized it was not fun and re-implemented it as a secret mechanic. Combos could be performed with precise timing and coordination. This accidental mechanic became a staple of the genre and let the series thrive. When it comes to its impact on fighting games, combos became an essential part of what makes a fighting game a fighting game. Fighting games without combos is like a bike with no wheels. It's just not a bike at that point. Street Fighter 2 remained the best-selling fighting game for about 28 years until 2019 when Super Smash Bros. Ultimate dethroned it. And that's if you even consider it a fighting game. Years after Street Fighter 2, with experimental games like Street Fighter EX and Alpha releasing, fans wondered, where is Street Fighter 3? While the opinions of Street Fighter 3 nowadays is usually best fighting game of all time, in the 90s, this was not the case.
Make the first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. Make the first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? The third strike, y'all, is Street Fighter 3.
After the boom of Street Fighter 2, Capcom was pumping out fighting game after fighting game, each of them bigger with more characters, more moves and crazier combos. So when Street Fighter 3 launched, focusing on a deep strategic gameplay with less characters and only Ryu and Ken returning, it's clear why Alpha 3 had the upper hand in terms of arcade sales and players. It just didn't feel Street Fighter. 2 more revisions of the game were released, and 4 years later, due to the PlayStation and Saturn not being anywhere near able to run these games, console ports were made. Adding together all sales of all 3 arcade versions and console ports, they just about made enough to get above profitability, which isn't very good considering it was supposed to sequel their biggest game of all time. The low sales eventually led to the fighting game Dark Age, a period in which no Capcom fighting games were released. However, in 2004, a certain moment changed everything.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. No.
This one moment and other Japanese players showing off the true limits of the game sparked massive interest in Street Fighter 3, and this is where the game got the appreciation it truly deserves. The slower, more strategic gameplay, beautiful animation and hip-hop soundtrack put together the only Street Fighter with a real street feel. The parry mechanic, which if perfectly timed allows you to take 0 damage. This mechanic meant at no point were you safe. Your opponent could parry your move, and no matter how big or how fast, if skilled enough, they could parry and leave with a devastating punish. This newfound popularity alone, however, did not change the fact that no new Street Fighter game had been made for almost 10 years. Or maybe it did. Inside Capcom, they noticed the popularity of the Daigo parry and sought to make a new game, this time focusing on casual players and competitive alike, but this time with an extra dimension. Amazing intro for an amazing game. The 10-year wait was definitely worth it because in my opinion, this is the greatest fighting game ever created. If there was a dictionary definition for fighting game, this game would be it. The roster is huge with every fighter feeling unique, even the Shotos have clear distinctions. Both English and Japanese voices are amazing, storylines for each character with animated starts and ends add so much to the character. Menus, art style, music and UI all have a very distinct 2000s feel to them. The announcer invigorating every match, the game was just amazing. And if that wasn't enough, EVO went from around a few hundred people to over 1,000 in Street Fighter's tournament alone. This game almost single-handedly caused the fighting game renaissance and started the ever-growing numbers of EVO. An interesting mechanic called the focus attack was made to reward predicting your opponent, but they added another part of the focus attack that changed the game completely. If you dash, you can cancel the focus attack, but if you focus attack, you can cancel any move. So doing both of these in quick succession allowed for combos that looked like something out of Marvel. And just like the previous game's mechanic was used in thought to be impossible ways by Daigo Umehara, this game was not left out.
Oh, and he gets him again. He's got a real hard read on that now.
Oh, Daigo Umehara!
Oh!
Joy, you can. What are you saying?
Oh no!
Who made it? Who made it?
This is Daigo.
Utilizing the focus attack dash cancel to his best abilities, Daigo was able to unleash a 25-hit combo on Momochi. But that's just the technical side of this game. Something even better is this game's appeal to casuals as well. A huge roster, gameplay made to feel similar to Street Fighter 2, not the best single player, but better than launch Street Fighter 5 and Guilty Gear. And the way it was just fun without knowing what you're even doing, figuring out your own stupid methods to do special moves, and the way it just appeals to all audiences just made this game bound to be a hit. And a hit it was, amassing 9 million sales and becoming the 7th best selling fighting game of all time. A hit fans were not expecting, however, is a massive hit to Street Fighter's quality. Street Fighter 5 launched to great disappointment. No single player modes at all, going from a roster of 44 to a roster of 16, with below average online, massive input delay, boring and uninteresting gameplay with no emergent mechanics. It felt like a punch in the face. It seems like you can't make a comeback from this, right? But if Capcom learned one lesson from their players, it's that it's not over till it's over. Over the years of Street Fighter 5's release, Capcom made sure to pay back their fans after the disappointment. The game had no arcade mode, so instead of just giving us arcade mode, they gave us a recreation of all previous games' arcade modes, with ending artwork and comics for each character's stories, with remixes of old tracks thrown in too. They gave characters new moves, added 30 new fighters, even though they were DLC, added a fully voice acted and cutscene story mode with a final conclusion to many fighter story arcs from the death of Bison, and story modes for each individual fighter. New mechanics, new abilities and V-triggers. Capcom really did turn the entire game and the opinion on the game around. And while it still has some fundamental issues, I think Capcom did well if you look into and consider the circumstances the developers were in. While I do think it's a bit of a cash grab with the amount of DLC and comebacks no longer feel special, the game is still very enjoyable and definitely the best game for beginners. And Capcom just keep climbing back up this mountain, as Street Fighter 6 so far looks absolutely phenomenal, taking a massive leap in a new direction for the series. Capcom are making sure you realize this game is different. The animation looks fluid, mechanics sound very interesting, and one of Capcom's main focuses is making the game fun for everyone. With a new open world single player mode, online crossplay and more, it seems like nothing can go wrong for this game. And if we look to the rest of the fighting game genre, which is defined by combos, then look to see which game pioneered this and see how many great games, moments in pop culture and events have been influenced by this one thing. It's like you can't escape Street Fighter 2. Whether you watch wrestling, movies or just play other fighting games, its influence will be felt, and it's clear that Street Fighter is forever a legend in video games.